welcome to Between the Lines. We're here on Thursday night. What are we up to, Chandler? What's the date? Is the date Thursday? What do you want, Chandler? The 16th? All right, 16th of May, and I am very fortunate to have a lot going on in the nation. We got protests going on campuses. We got Israeli-Palestinian things in flame. We got a lot going on, and Tennesseans are still suffering because they don't have all the protections they need from the federal government and other people and the administration. I mean, not the legislators, but we're getting some things done in Tennessee. And I've got the 33rd District Representative, John Ragan, here with me tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that the legislature has done. They got a pretty bad rap this year because there was a lot of theatrics going on, which kind of overshadowed some of the really good work they were doing and that we really need to be appreciative of here in East Tennessee. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Good to be here.
John comes on once a year to talk about it. Now, John's helping sponsor some of our programs, so he'll be looking at you double dip there. I think he was a little younger in that picture. John, I'm going a little younger in that picture.
Only a little.
Only a little bit. All right. Well, the session's out. I know you guys had to reduce all the federal money from COVID went away, ARA or whatever it's called. And so you had to reduce the overall budget by $10 billion?
That's correct.
And you did it because you guys have great recovery. Put another $100 million in the rainy day fund, which is basically an undesignated fund that they can use to pay bills at some point. They call it rainy day like we would at home. But in reality, what it is a savings account for the state government, and they have a lot of money in there because they have done things the right way. And we give credit to Bill Haslam. We give credit to, obviously, we give credit to Governor Lee, and we give credit to others who have done a good job in leading, and we've had good legislators. We have a more conservative legislature than we had in the past. But it's not just social issues, which it's also economic issues and fiscal issues that you guys have done a great job on. John, give us an overview. Try not to be too objective. Give us an overview of, just off the record, what did you get done that you're most proud of, the two or three things this year?
Well, I'd have to say boiling it down to two or three is tough.
Well, we'll expand, but
the issues, though, to help Anderson County in particular,
yes.
One of the issues that I have continued to do and did more this year was to get approval for ATVs to be on Highway 116, Highway 330 up in the mountains.
Yeah, up in Windrock, right?
Yeah, connect the trails to get all the way from Oliver Springs to Rocky Top, which is drawing lots of money through tourism.
That's what I was going to say. Don't think that's just for four-wheelers. We're getting a lot of sales tax off that, aren't we, John?
Absolutely.
I know Scotty's converted his school up there, Rosedale School, into overnight beds for people that come, and that's helped them.
And Ginger's Stop and Shop up there is benefiting a great deal, too. She was struggling just trying to hang on until we got those things in place, and that's benefiting not just her, but the whole area up there. In addition to that, some of the things that have gone on through, again, that I have had a hand in helping push. Department of Transportation TDOT has obligated $33.6 million to Anderson County for engineering right-of-way.
That's countywide?
Yeah.
Is it used in Oak Ridge, or is it just used in outside the municipal areas in the county?
Well, it's some of both.
Okay, that's fair. It should be.
Yeah, and the 10-year plan also includes improving State Route 170 to improve travel times and reduce crashes. There is an obligation, too, for a 10-year plan. Edgemore Road is anybody who has to travel that 2 times a day will tell you that it's almost a parking lot sometimes.
What's the timeline on that construction over there?
Well, it varies. The original estimate was 10 years.
And we're going to widen the bridge, right?
That is the holdup.
Okay.
That bridge alone is $88 million of the total project. And as inflation has hit us really, really hard in the current administration, that money which we had engineered, planned, and obligated for that is no longer enough.
Right.
And so we're having to go back and look at it again, which is unfortunate because that is one of the routes, both county and city, that definitely needs to be worked on. There's a lot of things we can go into.
You said that, and I tell my son, my wife, Saber, and I tell our son all the time, supply chain management. And as you've advised him, Caleb, applied statistics.
Absolutely.
And there's careers that will help us maybe move this country forward a little bit.
Well,
I don't want to get on him too much, but you have been a very big help in that academic area. Tell me some more stuff, John.
Well, we have modernized our school safety protocols, and I was glad to have a hand in that we obligated enough money in our budget to fund an SRO in every public school in our state, and there's over 1,800. Now, we do have a problem. The problem is that in 500 of those schools, even though we've put the money out there, we can't find people to fill the jobs, and that's even
What are the
after.
qualifications to be an SRO?
Well, currently it's a serving sheriff's deputy, police officer, someone in that category who's been through that. We expanded it to retired police officers too,
Right.
and we had a bill before us that was authorizing retired military in certain categories to go through some training to do it. It's even with those criteria that we put forward.
Would they be under the management of the sheriff in every county?
Well, the local law enforcement agency, if it's within a municipality, it's going to be the chief of police. Otherwise, it'll be the sheriff.
But if you found somebody in, Bumblebee County who you couldn't find before, they would have to be under a law enforcement agency to be an SRO.
No, they're hired by the local school district.
Okay.
That said, though, they still have to be approved and be authorized by the local law enforcement agency.
So if they sign off, then you're okay. Like if it's an ex-Marine with 20 years experience and you come in, the sheriff can sign off on that guy being the SRO.
Well, with certain criteria. They have to go through post-training, police officers standards.
All right. So that's why they're having trouble. There's not a lot of people that fit into those type of categories.
Especially in some of the rural areas, which is where our
Now, let
difficulty is.
me ramble a second. Now, we have a big issue in this state, and it's about 50-50, and that is, should teachers be allowed to go armed? And I want to comment on that bill a little bit. On the face of it, I don't like the bill. Okay, on the face of it, okay. I can just see everybody start to shooting always. There's a lot of things, right? You have an SRO officer, you have other things. I can see a locked box where you have guns and train people, teachers, 2 or 3 could get into it. So that's where I'm at. But when you get to the depth of the issue, you realize that it does 2 things. It fills gaps, the law does. Number one, it's voluntary. If the school system wants to opt out of it, they don't have to do it. You're not creating any mandatory rules. But if you want to opt in as a school system, it gives guidelines that teachers can go armed. It gives that right. And secondly, you just said it, 500 school systems in the state of Tennessee do not have SROs. Those are school systems that might want to opt in. Whereas Oak Ridge and Clinton may not see the need. They have good SROs officers.
Well,
Follow
obviously,
up on that.
in the majority of our school systems, you're right, we can get SROs, but those where we can't, it is a critical issue. And the criteria that we've established is very, very strict. The very first criteria is it's all local, and the first one is a teacher has to volunteer to do this. They must go through that same 40-hour post-training.
No force to do it. No one's forced to do it.
And besides the training, they've got to qualify with a weapon on an annual basis. They've got to go through retraining on an annual basis. Beyond that, the school, the directors of school in that area has got to approve it, the local principal's got to approve it, and the chief of the law enforcement agency in that area has got to approve it. So it's all local.
So what we call, when I was a kid, we always had the crazy subs. The people come in sub, and they always had some kind of something or another. They were we loved them, but they were not your normal teachers. They were just people that had a little eccentric. That's the word I'm looking for. You didn't want them to carry a gun. We wanted the trained teachers to carry a gun.
Well, again, let me stress that all the state did was authorize the local school districts to make the decision. The state did not obligate anybody to do it and did not even hint that it was going to be something that we were pushing. But the idea, straightforwardly, is when we looked at the tally, like I said, 1,800 schools, we had 1,300 that could get SROs, but 500 couldn't. And so the analogy that I like to use is a lightning strike. If you stand outside in a thunderstorm on a high hill, there's a probability you're going to be struck by lightning. But we don't force people to do that.
Yeah.
If you look at it from the other side, we send people to school. We force kids to go to school through truancy laws. And so we have an obligation to protect them from even a low probability of that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. They're obligated to go to school to a certain age, and you should keep them away from violence. Let me ask you, some people think, do you think that the guns, going armed for a protection purpose, not trying to be wider, but just a protection purpose, do you think the purpose of the guns was to have them there in case there were intruders into the school system, or do you think in some issues they were there to protect themselves against students?
I certainly hope it wasn't to protect themselves against students.
Happens.
Although maybe some school districts might
I would
otherwise.
be less hesitant to beat up a teacher if I knew that teacher might be packing. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Well, again, we do have some issues there, and 141 school districts, 1,800 schools, 87,000 teachers. Those are round numbers.
Right.
You know, in those numbers, you're going to have some, let's just say, individuals that
Yes.
fit into that eccentricity
Yes,
category
yeah,
you
you
mentioned.
do. But that's why you have training.
And again, screening.
And
One of the areas that we identified to pilot this, as in run a test program, they actually had 5 teachers apply, but they do a psychological test, which is the same one they
Sure.
give police officers. Only 1 of the 5 passed.
Right.
So that screening process is going to weed out those eccentric types. Then they've got to go through the training. That's
exactly right. So let's all take a deep breath on this teachers going armed thing and understand that there's a plan in place. It's not the wild, wild west. We're not trying to get into that kind of environment. What else have you got, John?
Well, some of the legislation that you asked me, I'm pleased with. I carried over 180 bills this year. Now, a great many of those fit into the category of sunset renewals and rule reviews and so forth.
Sure.
But I also carried some and participated in getting some passed on the illegal immigration issue. And quite frankly, that's something that is plaguing us in a lot of different ways. We, as a state, are not considered a border state, yet we're suffering the ill effects of a border state. Thousands, quite literally thousands of our Tennessee citizens are dying.
Go ahead. Dying?
Yeah.
Because of the drugs.
Drugs that these illegal aliens are bringing with them.
Yeah. And I want to point out, and I do it on almost every show we talk about this, this isn't the hard-working Mexican people who come here illegally, which should come here illegally, and other things, but they're running in people from all over the world, John, over that border, and they're muling in major amounts of fentanyl. And I think, and Senator Hager and I were talking, I mean, from the straight viewpoint of trying to kill young Americans, I think it's devious. I think it's nefarious. I just don't.
Well, one certainly could draw that conclusion.
Well, the Chinese are involved in this mass migration of drugs and pills to Mexico. We know the plants, the borders, intelligence has it. But our federal government, you know, I saw a bill. I was working on another campaign. I saw a bill where there was a vote. You all made a vote where local law enforcement have to cooperate with the federal government, you know. And I'm thinking to myself when I read that bill, maybe we need a bill to make the federal government cooperate with local law enforcement. So I think we got it backwards on that, but I understand the intention of that.
Well, that quite frankly eliminates the sanctuary city or sanctuary area completely, because that bill says in Tennessee that the law enforcement agencies, if they identify an illegal alien in the process of enforcing laws, that they are required, not may, must, contact the federal government and tell them that we have someone who is in our state, our nation illegally, and get the federal government involved.
The federal government won't even tell our local law enforcement who's coming over the border and how many. They just send them a notice that says 500 people are relocating your state. And they won't give us names or anything. I mean,
well, it goes
the
beyond
Biden administration's
that.
A nightmare.
The current administration is actually flying them in.
Oh, yeah, to different cities.
Well, and now you mentioned earlier the hard-working ones you didn't have a problem with. I don't either from the standpoint of industry. There is an issue, though, in that even the ones that have a job do not have high-skilled jobs. I
don't know if I agree with that. I mean, maybe not, but I wouldn't, you know, I know people in this town and in this area who wouldn't get a house built, wouldn't get a roof put on, wouldn't get anything done if it wasn't for Hispanic labor.
Well, I did a little research. There's a congressional study, which I have a copy of right here, and this research points out that 69% of the adult illegal immigrants have nothing beyond, and if they have that, nothing beyond a high school education, compared to 35%. What that means is they don't qualify for high-paying jobs. In the process, though, even if they're earning, they are still qualified for extensive use of welfare. This study from Congress pointed out that they receive $42 billion, that's with a B, in benefits.
$42 billion the Biden administration is paying illegal immigrants.
That's exactly right. And it's
and our urban poor ain't happy.
Well, it's about 4% of the total cost of Medicaid, food, and housing programs. So it's a significant chunk.
How many?
It's 4% of that total cost.
Let me tell you something. And the people that really need it, who have been here for 100, 200, 300 years, we won't go into a lot of details in these inner cities, aren't happy.
Well,
with the Democratic administration.
justifiably so, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But now, again, in many cases, they come here, they have children. Their children, under the current law, are considered U.S. citizens, and they can qualify for these benefits without their parents, the free and reduced lunch program,
I really don't have a problem with that.
et cetera. But again, my point is that is costing our taxpayers money that their parents are not making up. There's a net deficit. In fact, this study found that it's $68,000 per person that is a negative. That is when you consider their contributions, what they pay in taxes and contribute to our gross domestic product. When you subtract from that their benefits that they're taking, they're costing us $68,000 per person per year.
Yeah.
So it's
whether they live in Tennessee or New York.
It doesn't matter, and whether
It's an average.
The ones that are not working are costing us even more. So the issue and again, we're a nation of immigrants. I am actually pro-immigration from the standpoint of legal immigration.
Yeah. Can we simplify the process in Washington a little bit?
Well, it could be, obviously.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the issue that I have is I've always believed you follow the book. If the book is not followable, you change the book. You don't ignore it. And so,
I had a man who was dying. I went to visit about a year ago. Been a friend of mine since I was a young man. Went to school with his daughters. And I was talking to him about stuff. And he was 6 months. He passed away 6 months later. And probably in his early 90s. And he told me, he says, the problem with the Congress today and the problem with everybody is nobody wants to follow the rule of law.
well,
He said, if you'll just follow the rule of law, then you got something working.
yeah, and like I said, if the law is unjust, inaccurate, or otherwise not accomplishing its goal, then legislators come in and change the law to make it fit.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
You don't ignore it.
That's it. John, we're going to take our first break. We'll be right back. Brad, get us to break.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
Prescription drug misuse is a prevalent and potentially fatal problem. When people do not properly monitor, store, and dispose their medications, it can create an opportunity for misuse. Count it. Make it a goal to count your pills once every 2 weeks. Like it. Secure your medications at home. Drop it. Drop off unused or expired medications for proper disposal at any police department in Anderson County. For more info, visit asapofanderson.org. Brought to you by ASAP of Anderson. Prevention works.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking with State Representative John Ragan, who has led the fight with this legislation against illegal immigration. John has been sponsored bills and worked on bills from several years ago. We blocked sanctuary cities. Today we're doing even more with different things. And, you know, we're trying to be humane about it in the legislature, I think, but we also have got to, we can't let people run up unfair costs and other things, and that's where we're at. John, we talk about illegal immigration. You talk about there are no sanctuary cities in Tennessee. You all outlawed that, and we have some other issues that come in and out. Yeah. Tell me about. What do you know about the border? I mean, just give us a little federal insight, even though you're not on that wing, but you still hear, you get updates and briefs. I got a great one in a 12 or 15 of us law enforcement, and I went with my wife, and so Senator Hagerty told us, it just, every time you meet with him, you get scared. I mean, it's just crazy how much stuff's going on. Congress people in New York saying, I got to have more legal immigrants to get my census numbers up. I got to have this, I got to have that. What do you hear is coming over the border? I mean, what is the real problem?
Well, the real problem are not the ones that are coming over and get caught as much as it's the gotaways. That's as much as 30 to 40% more than the ones that we're aware of. Those are the ones that do not want to interface with law enforcement because of either national security issues or criminal issues.
Right.
And they're coming into our nation in huge numbers.
And Middle Easterners and others?
Chinese, and interestingly enough, nearly all of these, and the majority, are military-age males.
Yep.
And that alone is a serious problem.
That tells you something.
Yeah. The other piece of that puzzle, though, is that the gotaways, the criminals and the national security risk are here, and they are, shall we say, burrowing in and becoming more and more difficult to detect the longer they're here, until you get an event like 9/11. And then you have a problem because everybody wants to do something after the fact, but we need to be doing something before the fact. And it's difficult because...
Do you think there's sleeper agents coming in?
Oh, I have no doubt.
Okay.
In my...
Working for Chinese or somebody else?
Well, in my military background, I was a war planner.
Yes.
And I was privy to a lot of intelligence that even though it's very old and dated, it hasn't changed in
well, it was
great
Russians
terms.
30 years ago. It's Chinese and Mexicans and everybody else now. Not Mexicans per se, but...
Well, the issue that we have, though, is they're coming in, and they are a potential problem. We have to be able to do something about it. The current administration, now, again, let's not tar everybody with a broad brush here, but let's just say they're not doing enough. And we as a society are going to pay for that because completely apart from the other costs that I mentioned, the $68,000 it cost us taxpayers to, shall we say, make up the difference for the living cost of these illegal aliens, a major event. And it's not like they haven't happened. I mean, right here in Tennessee, it's only been a few years ago that we had a shooting at a Marine Reserve base in Chattanooga.
I remember.
That
had some Islamic Middle Eastern ties.
It did, and that is an issue that has touched us here. It's not like you're looking at San Francisco or New York. It's here in Tennessee. We have...
If I remember, the young man was raised here, went to school here, played sports here, went into the Middle East for a year or two, got reparated, whatever the word is.
He lived with his uncle over there.
Yeah, and he came back, and obviously he had some issues. And that's hard to detect when you're an American citizen.
Well, again, though, that particular issue is an illustration of the fact that if you're letting 2 to 7 million people across your border completely unchecked, you have that potential. There's another potential. We are not screening these people for things like tuberculosis and measles and other disease. A legal immigrant comes over here, must go through, in fact, visitors must go through a medical screening if they're coming legally.
And my numbers are 2,500 a week into the Tennessee area. I mean, 500, what we would call sweet, with ill intent, and then regular 1,500. They won't tell us who they are. They know. The federal government knows who they are. They won't tell us.
Well,
but the problem that bothers me is the ones that get over the border, they have their cash, they have their cell phone, they have their instructions, and they go to this farm, and it's got blue lights to follow on the farms, and they can't do anything about it. They've installed them. And they go up and they meet their location, and they're trained or planed or whatever out of there. They're taken out of there. Those are what we would call those extra.
That choked you, huh? I can understand. Understand why. You all right?
I'm all right. Thank you.
Well, that said, let me finish the comments. A bill that I'm particularly proud of, you asked me about that, related to this issue, is I got passed a bill that prohibits terrorist groups from being allowed to use meeting spaces in our universities. Well, what that does, I mean, it prevents these anti-Semitic, anti-U.S. demonstrators from going in there without penalty of law. I got it passed.
That's right.
Well, this was this last March, I guess it was. Might have been April. But the thing is that the bill now has some teeth in it that allows for enforcement.
Is it a felony fine?
Yes, sir. It's $3,000 per event. $3,000 for a university that has $1 billion budget doesn't sound like much. But when you say it's $3,000 per event each time, it adds up quickly. And so those universities have an incentive if they didn't before. Now, many of them...
Universities are impacted. UT, Tennessee Tech.
We have 11 universities in our state.
Okay.
And that are state supported. Now, we have others that are private. For example, Vanderbilt had an issue with some of those demonstrators earlier this year. This bill says if they get state money, and Vanderbilt does get state money, not directly from us, but because they accept students on Hope Scholarship.
That's correct.
And so they have to make an effort, too, to keep that under control. Now, there's a fine line between protecting free speech and the right to protest and demonstrate and coming down overly harsh and saying you can't do any of it. The fine line in my mind, and I think most people, is when you prevent your fellow citizens from exercising their rights or you're destroying property, you cross that line. And at that point, you're no longer a protester, you're a rioter, and you should be subject to the law. That's one of the things this bill did.
Well, I think the bill's important because we've seen, and we've got to believe that all of these, you know, the Palestinian sympathizers and other people, and I sympathize in some ways, but rule of law again. But I'm Israel yesterday, today, forever, but that's me. But what I see is infiltrators in that group. Those aren't just normal citizens coming at it. I mean, there's always some kids that are going to be.
Well, again, you can now. Fortunately, I think here in Tennessee, we haven't had the focus that some of the other states have, like New York or some of the others. But I think it was at Columbia University. They found that of the group they arrested, the protesters, only 40% of them were students.
That's right.
And so what that means is that somebody is paying to ship them in there. Now again,
they're going campus to campus to campus. They were in UT, got run out by a lot of kids. You know, obviously the kids came rallying out with American flags and overwhelmed them, and they left. I mean, they left that week and went somewhere else.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
But anybody that looked at the TV coverage of those, all you had to do was just ask yourself some basic critical thinking questions. How come all those tents were nearly all the same color, all the same type? Oh, by the way, how did they all get there? Who paid to get them there? Who paid to get the protesters there? If they're not students, who's paying for their food? I mean, this is an issue.
That's an excellent point, John.
You look at it, and obviously somebody with money, and we won't call any names, but you can certainly look it up in the news, somebody with money has got an interest in destabilizing us. Yeah. And that's one of the ways they're trying to do it. Taxpayer dollars, though, go to our universities, even though many of them have endowments and where we used to be supporting 80% of them, we're now only supporting 40 to 60% of their costs, but still the taxpayers are footing that bill.
We had a property in Anderson County. I want to say it was Anderson. It may have been in bordering county, where the owner of the property said this property can only be sold, cannot be sold to an American citizen. It has to be sold to someone outside of the American, designate on the property itself. Jay Reedy passed a bill. Tell us a little bit about strengthening those bills, the ban on prohibited foreign parties, and they can't come in here and tell us we can't sell to American citizens.
You're exactly right. And Representative Reedy's bill, which I signed on to, did that exactly. I had another bill that he signed on to, which unfortunately I didn't get out of committee, but the other bill was about investors. See, many times they get around this by getting a corporation to which they have controlling interest in to buy it, but it doesn't come out in their name. And the bill that I had said basically if the majority of that organization, that company, that corporation, whatever it is owned by organizations that are on our State Department list, it's the same deal. They don't get to buy. And furthermore, it's protecting us. here in Tennessee, unlike some other states, the Dakotas, for example, there were several thousand acres bought up right around sensitive military bases. Now, we have some here in Tennessee, but I don't think that there's any danger of our Tennessee population selling that land for that, although they did offer quite a bit, I'm told.
I can imagine. Let's take another break, and then we'll come right back and talk a little bit more about education and some other stuff.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
This is my husband, Alex Hussey. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was point man on foot patrol, and I stopped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
Come on, Alex, take on this mountain. That's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done, and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hussey, thank you for your service. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking with State Representative John Ragan, who has written a lot of bills this year and pioneered a lot, fighting illegal immigration, strengthening our Second Amendment rights, and I think, ironically, with all the debates that have gone on about private schools, public schools, and everything else, the Tennessee legislature did a good job in funding public schools this year and did some extras, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, and talk about the challenges of reading levels and other stuff. Sorry, I keep breaking up and coughing. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about Cameron Sexton, because you know it's tough being in charge, but he put through a bill that helped mental health get the same benefits. Would you tell us a little bit about what that does?
Essentially, he was primary sponsor. Of course, somebody else carried it for him.
Sure.
But we're getting the mental health side of the equation addressed, because, quite frankly, some of the stuff that goes on that we have a problem with, that people wind up going to jail for, is not really something that we should be worried about them being in jail. We should be treating them.
That's right.
Because if we give them the proper mental health treatment, we've solved both problems.
That's right.
It cost a tremendous amount of money.
Well, it said you appropriated $303 million into 17 programs.
Yeah, you got ahead of me.
There you go.
But it costs a tremendous amount of money to keep people in jail. $160 $5 a day per individual, and that adds up quickly. If you take that money and put it into treatment, you spend far less, and you wind up with a productive citizen who's contributing to society, not detracting from it by costing us.
Tell us some of the protection methods, some of the bills of criminal justice you had there we were talking about at the break. What are some of the things the legislature did to make Tennesseans safer?
Well, we appropriated $17 million for 60 new state troopers.
Now, where does that money go? Does it go to the state trooper statewide budget and they decide who gets more troopers, or does it go to different allocation?
It is designed to fund new recruits.
Okay.
Once they're in the program, the Department of Safety, and in particular the colonel there and his staff, appropriate to manning based on the needs, or I shouldn't say appropriate, distribute. We also put $15 million in there for firefighters, rescue squads, and EMS.
Okay. Is that money distributed through the counties?
It goes primarily, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Here's one that ties into the topic you were asking about earlier. We appropriated $6.4 million for military border deployment for Tennessee National Guard.
Wow.
Now, I have personally participated in, meeting with those troops as they go off to the border.
Sure.
And
do we have troops down there right now? Have they left yet?
I don't think that. You mean going or coming?
Tennesseans. Have they already been down there and are going to?
Yeah, they've already been down there, and we have with this money we can rotate them out and put them more. Now they're in a support function right now. They're not.
Is it classified, or do we know what state they're in? I guess everybody know that from calling home and stuff.
Yeah. As a government official, it's not to me to say.
Okay, I got you. How many are down there? How many do we send?
Again, that's not to me to say.
You're not helping me much.
Well, we appropriate enough money for an entire battalion.
Okay, that's good. How many soldiers in a battalion?
It varies based on the battalion, but anywhere around 1,000 to 1,200.
1,200. That's what I thought. Yeah.
The
other states have participated as well. Texas,
yes,
obviously.
Texas doesn't have to send them far. We got to ship them in there. But other states have done so as well. Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas have also sent troops along with some others. The issue that you run into, quite frankly, is the Border Patrol is overwhelmed. In fact, they've been relegated to doing processing. They come in, they've got to fill out paperwork. The people who are going down there now from National Guard are basically taking some of those tasks so the Border Patrol can get back to.
Are they ordered by the federal government not to engage with guns? And
you mean the National Guard?
No, everybody that's down there, like the federal Border Patrol that works the border, are they told not to shoot?
There are rules of engagement.
Yeah.
There are certain circumstances which are very, very limited where they can, but most of the time the rules of engagement do not allow them to return fire. Now, there have been instances where fire has come across the Rio Grande, but I think the rules of engagement say unless you're in danger of loss of life or limb, you withdraw and don't fire back.
That's a very broad statement there.
Well, again,
okay. I don't mean you. I mean them. Unless you're that's a subjective decision, right?
That issue varies based on the sector of the border and the circumstances. That is as important as that is, though. Except for the group that rushed the gate and none of them, drew weapons and fired, they more likely come across and present themselves to be taken into custody because they know they're going to be, given some paperwork and told to go somewhere and wait for a trial date. The trial date is, in some cases, years and years into the future, as long as 7 to 8 years. So basically, they never show, and it boils down to it's a free pass. That's an important function that we've got to change if we want to keep control of our borders.
How is our fight against drunk driving going? Do you have any numbers?
We passed an important bill this year on that issue. Representative Ron Gant, who, as a matter of fact, just yesterday underwent major surgery, was almost killed by a drunk driver. He put his name as prime sponsor on that bill, and all the rest of us signed on.
Right.
That bill, though, is intended to reduce the number of drunks we have on the highway. Now, going back to the issue that we were talking about earlier, in many cases we have some of those illegal immigrants that are on our highways not only inebriated, but with no license and no intent to get one. The license issue is another one that you mentioned earlier about the bills that I'd carried. Back in 2017, I carried a bill because of states like California that are giving licenses to these illegal aliens. And we have reciprocal agreements with most states that if you come from another state to Tennessee and you present that license from that other state, they will issue a Tennessee replacement if you're going to be a Tennessee resident. But the law that I was able to get passed with the help of my colleagues said that in addition to doing that, you have to show proof that you're a U.S. citizen.
How do they do that?
Well, a number of ways. One is a birth certificate, a passport, some other recognized government documentation.
Sure.
The end result, though, is that if they're going to bring a California license or wherever into Tennessee and say we want a Tennessee license, not only does that license have to say that, yeah, you're qualified to drive on the roads, but it's got to say you're a U.S. citizen to be in Tennessee.
You also, if I'm not mistaken, you can obtain a public identification card.
Those are free.
Those are free, and everybody should have one of those, no matter who you are. But that doesn't give you the right to drive.
That's exactly right. And those identification cards are primarily for people who don't drive that want to vote.
Or who can't drive, who can't drive.
Yeah, but now the citizenship requirement is still there.
Good. That's good. Okay, let's go down, finish up on the criminal justice stuff.
Oh, well, I've got a long list here. You don't want me to finish
that
up.
Quick. I won't stop. I lied. I probably will.
We appropriated $383,000 to collect data on the illegal immigrants in Tennessee from the law enforcement. In other words, when we really have no system right now that we can put our fingers around and say these are good numbers for how many illegal aliens are interacting with our law enforcement personnel. So we've created a system now, an information gathering system, so that we can figure out and know every time there's an interaction what the size of that problem that we're looking at is. I mentioned that we authorized 60 new Tennessee state troopers. We also authorized 13 new positions for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and we authorized new Homeland Security agents, one for each county. So again, the purpose here is twofold. That those Homeland Security agents are there primarily to ensure that we have some sort of input about potential school shooters. Mm-hmm. They're going to gather that information, but also the other important information related to our security and protection from would-be gangs.
Okay.
We also, in relation to that, changed the rules on bond amounts. As you're probably well aware from the news, some states are letting people out with no bond or very little. We said that's not going to happen in Tennessee. If you are under a reasonable suspicion of a violent crime, then you're not going to get out without a serious bond. And in some cases, if it's an allegation that is got probable cause behind it of something like murder or aggravated rape or such as that, you're probably not going to get out on any of it. We also increased the support for the victims of child sex trafficking. I personally carried a bill related to, I call it my anti-slavery bill, because believe it or not, human trafficking is a form of slavery.
Sure.
And the bill that I carried said that victims of human trafficking that are eventually freed from it can get their records expunged with proper proof, of course, and return to being citizens in good standing. And that stint that was forced on them by
another product of illegal immigration.
Yes.
Would you say the majority of trafficked individuals are illegals?
The overwhelming majority. There's no doubt about it.
All right.
Those issues too, though, are particularly important when we're talking about minors. We criminalized abortion trafficking for minors, and because again, the idea behind
explain that bill.
Well, what the bill did was essentially say, if a parent, as you're well aware, let me back up and say, in Tennessee, abortions can be obtained only for the protection of the life of the mother or some extenuating circumstance like that. So someone who wants to take a minor under the age of 18 who's pregnant across a state line to a state where abortions are legal,
like Georgia,
is committing a crime unless they're a parent. And the parent, of course, can do what they like with their children because that's a parental right. But someone who does that, especially without parent knowledge, is subject to criminal action on that. Those are some of the important things I think that your viewers are wanting to know about. We also, speaking of parents, we passed a bill for increasing parental rights. Actually, we can't increase those. We documented that they exist and they're not to be infringed on.
Yeah.
So that, from that standpoint, I'm rather proud to have been voting for that one.
Yeah.
Again, all of that ties back to part of our education system again, though. Our minors are the future of our state. It's incumbent upon us to educate them. That is to say, we must provide the tools for that individual to be able to be a good citizen, productive graduate at the end of their time in the system. And
when we come back from our final break, we're going to talk about education the rest of the way.
All right.
So let's take another break, Chandler. Thank you.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
Prescription drug misuse is a prevalent and potentially fatal problem. When people do not properly monitor, store, and dispose their medications, it can create an opportunity for misuse. Count it. Make it a goal to count your pills once every 2 weeks. Like it. Secure your medications at home. Drop it. Drop off unused or expired medications for proper disposal at any police department in Anderson County. For more info, visit asapofanderson.org. Brought to you by ASAP of Anderson. Prevention works.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
All right, crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Okay, welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking with State Representative John Ragan, who is has been our state representative since 2010, and we're going to talk a little bit about the reading. I've had teachers on the show, I've had everybody on the show talking about the reading challenges and the unfair assessments at third grade with COVID and other things. And one of the suggestions has been that we put more money into reading, we put more money into education, et cetera, et cetera. The truth be known that it really doesn't look that way when you research the data. Chandler, can you get this graph on here? It's too small really to see, but can't get it? We'll talk about it. It's all right. If we can't get it, we'll talk about it, but it's okay. Basically, it basically allocates, tells us a little bit about, those graphs are awfully small. We may have to do it verbally.
He can zoom in on it, I think.
I'm looking at it zoomed in and I can't read it. All right. For reading scores, okay. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is state by state, who spends the most money on pupils and where does it go? And as you can see by the graph, it's up and down. It depends where you're at and what you're doing. Like the first one on the left, red dot, is New York. Okay? Then you've got D.C. and some different situations. But we're going to talk a little bit about the numbers. Tell me some of what's on that chart.
Well, this chart illustrates that throwing money at a problem doesn't solve it. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
The bars along the bottom there are the expenditures per pupil by all the states in our nation.
Let's go throw a couple of examples at them.
Well, again, if you look at New York, which is the red bar.
The highest.
Yep. They're spending over $30,000 per pupil. And their score there, which is indicated by that circled dot, is exactly the same score, if you look across the far side, as Tennessee.
And what do we spend?
Well, we're spending 2.5, actually more than 2.5 times less.
So what's our number?
Well, the score on there is 214 on both of them for that reading score.
But they're 30,000. How much do we spend?
We spend 11,608.
There it is. Okay.
And
the average in the nation is 16,000.
Right. But again, I'd call your attention there that little dotted line, vertical line there, has the lower bars. As you look at that on the screen, I think it's to the viewers' right. Those are all states that spend less than that average.
Yeah, you see it right there in the middle. See that dotted line coming down? I know it's hard for them to see, but the most expensive on the left, right there, and then the most inexpensive on the right over there. And we put Tennessee in orange because that's what color we buy.
There you go.
That's it.
But again, I want to point out that the dot right next to Tennessee, the spike there, that's Florida.
Yeah.
They're spending only $100 per pupil per year more than Tennessee, and they're the second highest score. And if you look
above the line is scores, below the line is dollars. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, again, if I can, these are the dollars that are spent.
Right.
These are the scores that are coming back from the reading. Utah, which spends considerably less than we do, right here, is third or fourth highest. And again, the illustration here is it's not a question of money. You have to have enough. Once you cross the enough category, then more doesn't necessarily get you better. Now you can look over there, that highest dot there you see is Massachusetts, and they're spending a lot of money. But Florida, like I said, is very, very close to them, and they're spending a lot less.
A whole lot less.
If you look at that middle arrow there, the dot there that is D.C., right down there, they're like fourth from the bottom, and they're still spending way over the average. I've colored them in red as well.
Because the difference, in my opinion, and we talked about this is like you say, you must mandate something. But if you're not reading at home in your first 5 years, if somebody's not reading to you, a grandparent or a parenting, and you're not getting exposed to languages, when you go to school, you're way behind.
Absolutely. Another issue that has come up, and you've mentioned it, several people object to that and say, well, we have to make up for that as a state. And to a degree, they're correct. But our reading scores, unfortunately, everyone likes to point to COVID, and our reading scores did drop considerably. But before COVID, we weren't doing that well. Only 32 to 33% of our state's third graders, when they went to the fourth grade, were reading on third grade level.
Why did you move the testing from third grade to fourth grade?
Actually, it's matriculation from third to fourth.
Okay.
So the testing occurs at the end of the third grade, and testing again occurs at the fourth grade. But the issue that is important to us as a state is from investment. Our taxpayers, us, are putting money into this system, and we're buying a product. People take great exception to saying, well, you can't call a human being a product. That's not entirely true in the sense that what we're paying for at the end of the day is a productive, good citizen. And when they get to the end of the 12th grade, that's what we want.
The military does it. They assess good soldiers.
Yep. And again, we put a lot of money in it. Now, not as much as some other states, but we're still at the point where we need that. And statistically speaking, the third grade, fourth grade point is a critical issue because correlation studies have been done at that particular point. You read to learn up to the fourth grade, and from fourth grade on, you learn to read up to the fourth grade, and from fourth grade on, you read to learn. And so if you can't read on level when you get to that point, you get further and further behind. And one of those correlation studies that anybody can look up online if they have a desire to, I think the last study I saw was about 5 or 6 years old, but there's a 70% correlation between inmates in our prisons and them reading on a third grade level or lower. Now, of course, correlation is not causation, but you have to ask yourself a question. If those people could read on a third grade level or an appropriate level when they were there and got a good education, they would probably be able to get a good job and wouldn't have resorted to criminal activity and wound up us being taxpayer paying for their incarceration.
I would like to see two correlations, which are not popular anymore, and you get criticized for even talking about it. I would like to see the correlation that we did. I like two-parent homes. That's one correlation I'd love to see. And the second one, and really, is faith-related. I'll bet you money that people that go to church on Sunday in a single or two-parent home, and their child goes to church every week, language arts, right, preaching, whatever, or Sunday school, I think those kids probably perform at a higher level. And the correlation may be discipline, not exposure to words, but I don't know. Kids don't have a chance in some situations. Again,
as far as the taxpayer is concerned, and as you know, I chair the Government Operations Committee, which is the watchdog.
Very well, yeah.
We've been accused of, when we spend a nickel, squeezing it so hard that Jefferson screams. But I view that as my duty to my fellow taxpayers to make sure that we're indeed getting what we pay for. In the education side of the house, there's a spectrum there. We have very, very high-performing school systems, very, very high-performing. Some of them are here in our county, and high-performing students. Right. But the issue is we have 95 counties in our state. We have to make decisions on the basis of what's best for the entire state, not just this one. Now, yes, we want to make decisions on what's good for this one. We certainly don't want to hurt it. But by the same token, we have some counties, let me rephrase that, school districts in some counties west of here that have a 5% graduation rate, or that have reading scores that are hard to even measure.
5% graduation? They ought to pass through that many.
Well, again, we're talking about effective graduation, I should say. Okay. That is to say, a graduate who is able to accomplish the task a graduate should be able to.
Talk about report cards. We only got a minute and a half. We came way up on report cards. I was looking at 3 different assessments, and one was 31, one was 24. I mean, I can remember we were 47 for a decade.
Well, actually, 49th when I first ran for office.
Yeah, way back then. I remember that.
Of course, there's different rating agencies, but that was 49th. We have now clawed our way up as a state, and I want to give full credit to our teachers and administrators, our school boards. The NEEP, which is this organization here.
Why are we crawling up? Are other people coming down, or are we crawling up?
It's some of both, to be honest with you, but I think we have made progress increasing our scores. Other states that were ahead of us potentially, like California, have come way down.
You know, electronics does equalize everything. I mean, you can be poor, and if you've got a tablet and a phone, that's one of the benefits of that. There's a lot of negatives, but that's a benefit.
Well, yeah, and again, our school systems have made great strides. I'm going to give them credit where it's due. We have increased our funding for our school system, by the way, for year-over-year $3.8 billion. In fact, by 2026, our teachers will be in the top 10 in the nation in terms of paid. So we are putting money into the education system as we should be.
Real quick, John, because I got 1 minute left. Tell us, we didn't go through with vouchers. It didn't make it. You opposed certain versions of it. There were certain versions that looked like it would be okay. Tell us what public education funding you got done anyway. What else did we get? I know you don't have the list in front of you, but what are the kind of things did we get money for? I know we got money for, I think it was close to 25 million or more we got put into teachers' funding.
Yes, we got teachers' paycheck protection passed. Also, we changed requirements so that teacher licensure can be improved and made easier, so that we have a shortage of teachers. We're trying to solve that problem, both with the pay and reducing the burdens on them.
Good.
It is indeed something that is worth doing. Our system is progressing, just not fast enough.
I got you. All right. That looks like all the time we got. They're yelling at us from the back. I apologize for the coughing earlier, just getting out of some allergies. Thank you, John, for coming on. John Ragan, State Representative.